The following is a review of a comic book and should not be looked at as an endorsement of the creator involved. If you really think that, you should have yourself checked out because you're reading into things that aren't there. Also, the quality of this video is low. If you're expecting higher standards, go check out me at Nerd@Newsstand or something else. What you see is what you get. Thank you and enjoy.
Hey guys, StarCraft here. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'm still going to continue with my End of an Era stuff, but this one in particular, hold on a second. A bit better. And this one will, it's still something it might be something being thankful for things. In a morbid way, you'll see what I mean. Now, what I'm about to talk about is the trade version of it. It's Superman Infinite Crisis, which collects basically the last issues of the post-crisis, pre-Infinite Crisis era, where you had Adventures of Superman, which ended its naming here, the Superman Volume 2, which ended in Adventures of Superman's numbering, since it was a continuation of the first Superman volume's numbering, and it also appeared in Action Comics, which continues to this day. But one thing though I do look about is that it shut the door and did some retconning, obviously, but it really did bring finality to the Golden Age Superman. And very much so with the Kal-El from Infinite Crisis. And yeah, I'll just go right in. I'll show you guys what I mean. Now, the one thing to point out is that, now, sorry for the acoustics. It's echoey in here. Not going to say where I am, but it's echoey. But this trade also includes the Infinite Crisis, Secret Files, and Origins, which basically fills in the gaps between Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis, explaining what led to Alexander Luthor going crazy and everything. And, well, it's a very good story told by, Marv Wolfman. Love the cover, by the way, by Ivan Rice. But yeah, basically, the gist of it is, throughout all this purple prose, basically, is that Alex is realizing something. He's seeing people who's had a long, full life, memories, everything, and a Superboy who's had a past that he won't shut up about. And yeah, you're just seeing all this stuff, and he's watching all this, but Alex didn't have that. He grew up way too fast, so as far as he knows, he's seen things from his own perspective as an outsider. And again, he's already starting to mess with Superboy by changing, whenever he sees about his family, Alex changes it so he sees their deaths when the antimatter wall consumed them. But basically then saying, how, yeah, time has no linear progression, but the big kicker is when it's revealed something. When, at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Alex said, I'm taking you to that other place, heaven. Because he reveals, in that moment, he saw heaven, which is where they're at, and he saw hell. Turns out what he thought was hell was actually Apocalypse. He was seeing through Darkseid's eyes, who was looking through him at the time to attack the Anti-Monitor. And he basically realized, oh yeah, it's hell, but it still has access to Earth. It's still in the plane of existence. In other words, he still feels like they condemned him. Now they're in a paradise, but it's a paradise that's only helpful for Earth 2 Superman and Lois and Superboy to a degree, but not to him. What does he have? Again, he was born and rapidly aged during a crisis. That's all he knows. And eventually he starts to get the idea of, he's basically becoming more like a Luthor. A Luthor who did all this stuff, and what's his reward? Having to listen to a whiny brat and these two old people just reminiscing about their past, while again, he has nothing to show for it. No reward for him. Yeah, I can understand why it would make him go nuts. Now, push him as far as it did? No. And then we get the first time Superboy Prime punched the wall and changing continuity, changing reality. Stupid, but I always kind of liked it. I always found it an interesting idea. But yeah, basically, eventually, we have some nice moments showing off what's been going on Earth. Superboy Prime keeps on punching the wall and changing continuity, changing reality, but it keeps on hurting Lois. Until eventually it's decided they make their way through and they're going to start doing their plans, which eventually would send in motion the events that lead into Infinite Crisis. But first, to do that, we find out that his family do exist on this Earth, but they died in a car crash. So yeah, Earth 2 Superman is becoming so depressed he wants to save Lois, and Alex decides he will provide some of his powers to Earth 2 Superman to fully bust their way out of the wall ahead of time, and he strips down naked. I don't get it. But once he does so, yeah, he basically starts to manipulate their plans, and that's what leads into Infinite Crisis, to find the perfect Earth. You know, in this trade, they actually mix up pages from Infinite Crisis itself when they come to the newly made Earth 2, and when Lois finally just dies. She dies of old age. And yeah, Earth 2 Superman lets out a huge yell, and Earth 1 Superman, Earth Prime Superman hears it, flies off, and this leads into the three-part story. As Superman, Earth 1, and Prime Superman, now we don't see the start of the fight. It basically leads into it and already leads into the fight. But basically, he showed up, Earth 2 Superman throws the first blow by slamming a green car, of course, into him, saying, "You killed her, you brought the infection here." So that's what leads into this fight, as they are just duking it out. As we're seeing the different histories. Then this leads into a Jeff Loeb written, Tim Sale drawn memory book of Golden Age Superman. Just some brilliant artwork. Again, this is just trying to write up a send-off before we get into the big bulk of the story. And then we get back. Now, this was all, besides the Jeff Johnson, Jeff Loeb stuff, all the rest of this is written, and Marv Wolfman on the Secret Files and Origins. This is all written by Joe Kelly. So, yeah. As we see a brief moment of with Earth 2, Superman and Lois in the past, when things start to go nuts. Then we see, actually we start to get and understand what's going to be happening here. As we realize Earth Prime Superman has swapped places. He's now in the Golden Age era. As we see the whole defeating the wife beater and throwing him out the window, in the wall, which post-crisis actually did happen. So we have stuff like that happening as fight continues on. We see him trying to be Clark and all that. And yeah, basically it starts to do, like things are starting to go a little nuts. And all that. And yeah, basically he's starting to relive through World War II. Again, he's just thinking about all this. It's like Pearl Harbor. And he's like, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. This war is just. My enemies are cowards, vile and ruthless. And my allies, my friends, are the greatest men and heroes I've ever known. Trustworthy, honest, right. There is no gray area. I'm fighting the good fight. But then he realizes then he could end the war. So he tries to bring in the gray by go to try and stop Auschwitz. No good, because of them having the Spear of Destiny, using magic that keeps them from coming in. And he feels like, no, this will never happen again. As years go on and he gets older, starts to get a little gray-haired already, he then proposes to Lois, I believe, and reveals, no, not even that yet. But, yeah, he said he wants to tell her something, but he'll do it tomorrow, as we have the McCarthy era. And he decides to make a difference. And he basically reveals that he's Clark Kent, and he's ashamed to be an American after what's happened. We start to see the different origins, pre-crisis, post-crisis, and birthright, as we're just seeing everything going through. But now we find out the opposite happened. Earth 2 Superman is now in the Earth Prime timeline. So he's then deciding to try and right the wrongs. And basically, by doing what he feels this Superman should have done. Not be black and to be black and white, not be gray. And again, they're still fighting in there. And then we have his first meeting with Batman, where it goes differently. Basically, with Batman revealing how there's a bomb hidden somewhere that will kill an innocent. And in the post-crisis, Superman believed it and started flying around. This version, though, however, calls him out and realizes that the bomb's on him. He takes and reveals to him that, hey, I just want to make a better place and we could do it together. So they said, in other words, start the world's finest much sooner than it took in post-crisis. We get a brief bit drawn by Phil Jimenez. As you can tell, there's a tour de force of artists, during Infinite Crisis, saying that this won't ever happen again. Then we get Superman and Batman going in, since they were able to work together, they're both able to bring down Lex hard. Revealing as well that Lex, him dying of cancer, they make a deal. We could help you survive the cancer if you work for us. Yeah. That's Superman, and that's Earth 2 Superman doing what he could do in his world, but because the rest of the world is so gray, obviously things are going to play out differently, obviously. And we then get, done by Dan Jurgens, him revealing Lois and himself to Lois. And the funny thing is, like, you, and at the same time, does the same thing to do and on the Earth 2. Then we have the fight with Doomsday, and this is where things get a little ridiculous. He's wailing, and the fight's happening exactly the same way, but because he wills it, Superman just stands up. Which, okay, to be fair, that does make sense, because if you look at how the original deaths went, it goes like Doomsday is and he's down, you stopped him, you saved us. Then one could say he let himself die because he was so tired. He felt like good. Because basically it's like if Doomsday was getting back, like he's getting back up, Superman would have been like, ugh, he would have gone back up too. But in this case, because he's saying he's still down, but I'm still getting back up. Yeah, a bit of a stretch. Then we jump way ahead to the stuff with Dr. Light, and this is where it comes a little hokey, because it's hard to tell. Because Identity Crisis introduced that a lot of the Silver Age still happened. But at the same time, though, trying to reconcile that in with Death of Superman is what makes this a headache. Because now you're basically saying, oh, the satellite era happened after the death, even though we know what happened. It's one of those confusing things. But basically, things happen. Superman flies in, uses the Phantom Zone projector, and banishes Dr. Light, because of how evil he's become. But eventually he starts to, again, because the rest of the world is gray, but he's sticking to a black and white morality, he's going to start banishing more and more people to the Phantom Zone. Until Wonder Woman and the others have enough of it, and Zatanna tries to do a spell, but we find out that Earth 2 Superman has united with Batman and the Elite. It's Joe Kelly. Of course he brought the Elite in. Are you really that surprised? As the fight is still on, Earth 2 is still going on, we start to see things where things start to fall apart. Things seem to be going fine initially, as it looks like Earth 2, Superman's been able to banish so many of the other criminals and make more of a utopia, but it's one of those utopias where they know it's built on a dictator, as Maxwell Lord makes a deal with Wonder Woman. Meanwhile, on Earth 2, Earth Prime Superman, because he's been doing the whole I will inspire people by doing all the heavy lifting in a world of black and white morality where people feel like, oh, he's doing all the work, we don't have to do anything. It's just him and Power Girl now. Everyone else is retired. No new heroes is coming out because there's no need to. They have Superman. Then eventually starts to become, things are built, you have the red skies leading to the crisis. Meanwhile, on Earth Prime, everything's starting to go to hell hard. As it turns out, Luthor is working with Maxwell Lord as well. Even saying, like, the irony is, the man impressed me more than any other. He identified a problem and he dealt with it. I think he truly would have made a better world, but she never have made me his peon. Yikes. Meanwhile, we see Earth Prime Superman on Earth 2 going after the Anti-Monitor. It's just him, no one else. And even with all of his power, he's not enough, as he's knocked down and killed. Meanwhile, things just go to hell even further, as it turns out Maxwell, Lord, and Lex combine the criminals of the Phantom Zone in with Omax. Again, things are just going downhill. Dr. Polaris explodes. We see then just everything just spiral out of control. Lex takes over Max and kills Max. Again, just everyone is just dead or dying. Earth Prime Superman's dead on Earth 2, and eventually Earth 2's and Superman's actions on Earth Prime, everyone's dead. As now they're both arguing still. We each live a lifetime in the blink of an eye and return to the emptiness of Earth 2. There's nothing I could have done. And then I love this with Earth 2 Superman. My heart swells with the power of truth. His world wants to die. Too complicated, too conflicted, self-loathing, and it's in him too. To which Earth Prime Superman says, I almost pity him. Almost. Too blind to see that his world has a shell. And what a shell. Empty as his black and white morality. The falseness of it all is part of his very being. And they both realize why they won't understand why they can't be allowed to survive. And I love how they use George Perez's cover to Infinite Crisis as a panel, as this leads into them fighting more and more. Until then we start getting into where the fight picked up on Infinite Crisis as they just are devastating Earth 2 Metropolis. Till Lois grabs him with the lasso, and basically he chews him out, basically saying how your Batman built a satellite spawning an army that killed dozens. Your Wonder Woman murdered Maxwell Lord. And worst of all, you, Superman, could have stopped this before it started. You should have. You should have left them to a better tomorrow. Instead, when the universe needed its greatest heroes, they refused to stand together. You had the opportunity to make this into the perfect world. It had the potential to be, and you wasted it. That's why I had to come here. That's why my Lois died. To which Earth's Prime Superman makes the logical point of, if you're from this Earth, it can't be perfect. Because a perfect world doesn't need a Superman. And we end there with him realizing it. Now, why am I saying I'm thankful for this? Because it shows the darkness of both sides. The black and white morality, but the overly complicated of a gray morality. Now, granted, it doesn't feel like it's demonizing the Golden Age to an extent, but I get the point that Joe Kelly was trying to make. Saying that you can have black and white morality in a black and white moral world, but black and white moralities in a real world, a gray world, just doesn't work. Just like having a gray morality in a black and white world can be just as devastating. They're incompatible. That's why these are happening. And for this being a send-off for post-crisis and the Golden Age, I think this is a good one. It's not a final story, but it is the end of an era, because this was invented in the Infinite Crisis, which, while taking a lot of the post-crisis stuff, does change things a little bit. And I'll eventually give the finality to post-crisis as a whole, and maybe tomorrow, maybe not. But I am so thankful I just want to say I'm thankful for everyone out there. I'm just going to take this moment to say that. I'm thankful for all of you guys who've been watching me. Thankful for all of those of you who have stuck around, and despite my either going silent or my rants or what have you, thank you guys all. Because it's been a rough year for so many of us. And I want to thank someone out there who's been an inspiration for me. I'm not going to say who, but they know who they are. They've been an inspiration, their strengths, even through their hardships, especially this past year. And I can't think of a better person to want to be thankful for and to have in my life. So, yeah, I just want to thank you especially, and anyone else out there as well. My friends, family, what have you. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Eat a lot of turkey, or whatever you're going to eat. Try not to get into fights with family members you don't have issues with. Don't end up like this. And just have a good one. Catch you all later.